exactly as you are. You are welcome here.
Good morning. Good morning. I am grateful to be with you today, and I am grateful for those of you, especially Brenda, Boisard, and Ann Scarborough, and Shannon Black, who helped put on the service 2 weeks ago, and also John helped at that time, so that I could be in Standing Rock and be able to witness a miracle. I felt as if I was part of history when I stood in a prayer circle just at this time. The prayer circle lasted for 3 hours, and I was standing on several inches of ice. This prayer circle was led by Chief Arwell Looking Horse, and faith leaders spoke from all over the country, and around us were thousands of veterans. It was heartwarming to experience the happiness later that day when we were making a circle around the camp, and we heard that the permit was denied to drill through the area held sacred by the people of Standing Rock. And at that time, we also felt that we were fulfilling a prophecy made by a man named Black Elk, who was around 10 years old at the time of the massacre at Wounded Knee, of a great circle that would be a life-giving circle. It is good to be a part of these good prophecies rather than the apocalyptic ones. That felt like good medicine. We need good medicine during these days. And to share with you a bit of the good medicine that I brought back with me, we're going to do something a little different for the next couple of minutes. Before we stand to sing, I want you to greet the people around you. And when you are ready, please stand and we will sing in body or spirit hymn number 1061, For So the Children Came. But first, let us greet one another.
All right, perfect. For the kids, it's a fire drill because the other part can get kind of scary. The chances of that happening are about like winning a lottery. They want to be prepared, so I'm prepared.
You'll sing with us the first time through, and you see that there's a narrator part on the second page. We're going to take care of that part. We're going to do 2 at a time. So don't start singing too soon, but you'll know when because you'll be following Lisa up here, okay? Predict their future courses. No wise men see a star to show where to find the babe that will save humankind.
I'm talking about right now, Susan Zagara? Ezagari. I'm going to get that right. Anyway, she's part of the Happenings Hub. She has been very much involved in working with the youth and getting us involved along with her in providing services for them and doing collections for them. And it's with this above and beyond that I just wanted to make a little presentation to Susan, so you come forward. We want to thank you very much, congregation, thanks you very much, and this is for you. I'm having Susan stay, and we're not having a story for all ages today because Susan is the engineer of the Happenings Hub. How many of you have heard of the Happenings Hub? Not all the hands are raised, and that's why Susan's up here. Okay, Susan, tell us a little bit about what you can find at the Happenings Hub and where it is.
Our Happenings Hub is downstairs after each service on Sundays, and we have a table towards the back, and the whole point is this is our face-to-face communications piece for our whole community. So we do have a Facebook page, we have an email list, we have a monthly newsletter, we have a weekly e-letter, and we have Happenings Hub, which tries to be that come talk to a person and you can have your questions answered. We have information about the near-term upcoming events and activities. So usually anything within the 2 weeks or 3, we'll have information down there. And we really love to visit with people and learn what they are passionate about. And one of our main goals is to really try to connect people in our community with those opportunities and activities that they are passionate about. So please come visit after. We also sell coffee down there, and so whenever a committee or another group has activities going on, they often come down and join us next to our table. Connie Gates has been doing that with the Guest at Your Table program this month, and so anyway, so for any of you who are on committees too, feel free to come down there and join with us. And yes, thank you.
And I want to tell you a secret, wonderful part about this Happenings Hub is that if you are here alone or even with a lot of people around you and you're a little bit shy, this is the perfect place to go because it means during social hour you're not having to go seek out people. You can go there and you can talk with people and make friends and feel at home. Thank you, Susan. You've made a huge difference in our community with the Happenings Hub. And now I would like for us all to sing our children downstairs. There are many ways to meditate. I will ring the bell, and today we have another dimension for meditation, and that is the beautiful painting by Judith Mayer of the Syrian boy, Omran, and it is called Omran, Your Angels Are Here. Angels, what? angels are here. And it came as into Judy's amazing creative mind in her own hopes that Omran would find peace. So let us enter into her creative and beautiful experience as we open ourselves to what is in our hearts and what is beyond us in the greater world. Let us listen to the bell. Let us breathe together, knowing our beloved earth is just a few feet under us. All those layers down to the fiery core, and above us, the sky, the mountains covered in the amazing snow, and above that, stars. And beyond the scope, beyond the reach of our arms, let us bring together today, let us remember the people of Aleppo, of whom Omran was one. We ask for blessings. We ask for the humans who are in a position to reach out, the government leaders who are in a position to bring peace, to feel the urgency of peace. We also ask for comfort for the Coptic Christians of Cairo as they mourn the death of so many from the bombing at their church. We also call in close to this community Cheryl Hawley, Lee's sister who just underwent brain surgery and seems to be doing well, but let us hold her in the light of this community. And also Connie Gates, who was in a car accident this week. She is a beloved member of our community, and she will be going through a difficult period, although she is happy to have survived. And as spunky as ever, she will have to go through rehab for her broken heel and for, I believe it is 8 broken ribs. Let us hold her in the light of this community, and those of you who wish to be of service, please email me. Each week we bring with us these joys and sorrows from the people with, oh, and I forgot, my niece, Emily, who is here among us and who had her appendix taken out yesterday. We give thanks for the miracle of her being among us today and even smiling there on the front row. For that we give thanks. And the thanks of her parents are also hovering about this room. I will ring the bell and I invite you into a time of silence. And before that, I invite you to say the names of people you want to bring to us in joy or in sorrow. Of course, we are so happy that Hazel is doing better. Let us enter this time of silence. throughout this week, may we continue to hold those dear to us and those far away, and especially let us hold this country. Amen.
Today's offering will be shared with Mayor, an organization that provides refuge for destitute women, children, and men from all over India, and helps them improve their lives irrespective of gender, caste, creed, or religion. Will you join me with saying the words printed in the order of service for our offering? We are His church. We are His hands, His heart, His voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
ago at a retreat for Unitarian Universalist ministers in Colorado Springs, I had the rare opportunity to listen to a Transylvanian Unitarian minister, Reverend Sándor Kovács, as he spoke about his life. He began his story during World War I. In 1916, Romania sided with the Allies and invaded Transylvania, a place where both Hungarians and Romanian-speaking people lived. The Germans invaded back, unleashing a campaign of rapid infantry movement. When the German army arrived at the village where Sándor's family was living, the villagers took refuge in a barn. Men, women, and children hid and listened to the sounds of the army crashing through the woods. Sándor's great-grandmother held a baby daughter, Agnes, in her arms. For some reason, the baby began to cry, and after trying everything to quiet her, the mother had to make an awful choice. Finally, she knew what she had to do, and she held the baby's face close to the cloth of her dress so that the baby would not be able to breathe. The baby's sister, Anna, who was deaf, saw what was happening, grabbed her baby sister, and took her out of the barn and into the woods to hide. Both the baby and her sister survived. Sándor said, "My great aunt became my grandmother too. I had 3 grandmothers." This song, "Sister in My Arms," fresh off the press, just written for today, is dedicated to this woman of courage who risked her life to save her sister. This is Sister in Her Arms.
Ooh.
come together in order for you to be that combination of characteristics that you are? What if your parents had not met? In my parents' case, what if my mother had not wanted to date that scruffy geologist who showed up in the Bighorn Basin? What if my great-great-grandmother had died in the cholera epidemic that raged through the boat headed from Scotland to the United States? What if Mary Lou's grandfather had died before her grandmother became pregnant with her mother, instead of during the 8th month of pregnancy? Reverend Shandor Kovach's very existence depends on the courage of his great-aunt Anna. If Anna had not taken her sister Agnes in her arms, Agnes would not have survived. Her gravestone, if they had been able to erect one in the middle of that war, would have been one of those sad, tiny stones that we see in cemeteries everywhere, of a child only 4 months old. It was September, harvest time in Transylvania, and soldiers were coming in angry at the Romanians who were daring to create their own country and leave the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The soldiers were bent on laying waste to the land and the people. A baby threatened the safety of the whole group. What an awful choice for the baby's mother. And this is a choice that has been made over and over again in history. There is something mythic about the necessity to kill one person for the survival of the group. When I heard this story of salvation, of one sister saving another, I wept. And then I so much wanted for us to write that song. And every time I hear this story, or I tell this story, my voice gets all wobbly. I'm sure you can hear it from where you are. And I get teary-eyed. This week, I've been trying to figure out what it is about this story that I find so moving, no matter how many times I tell it. In the mountains above the village where we lived in Japan for so many years, there was a lake called Yashanaike. Mountain climbers said that the weather was changeable around that lake, which made it dangerous in any season. A legend handed down through generations spoke of human sacrifice. Each year, a young girl was dressed in beautiful clothing and riding a white cow was sent down into the depths of the lake to appease the gods. Her death kept the dragon god from overflowing its banks and destroying the villagers' crops. Over and over again in history, young girls have been forced to play roles, sometimes to their deaths, physical or psychological or intellectual, in the cultures into which they were born. My great-grandmother Patty told me that when she went to the gatherings at the tabernacle, she and her sister Sadie used to hide behind the people in front of them because they were afraid that the elderly men sitting on the stand would want them as wives. Mothers have often been accomplices in the control of their daughters. In China, the foot binding of daughters was done by their mothers. In my own life, it was my parents who most wanted me to stay in a marriage and a religion that was a death path for me. And on the larger level of societal structures, it was easy to see at the time of the Civil War that the wealth of many was built on the backs of slaves and the very poor. In Unitarian churches in Boston, there were abolitionists sitting next to people who were made wealthy by the textile industry that depended on the labor of slaves. That is still true. The very wealth of our nation has been built through, and I can say this because they were my ancestors, the land grabbing of white settlers and the structures that grew out of a mentality of white supremacy. If this idea is new to you, and I'm springing it on you, I'm glad to give you a reading list because I don't really have time here to explain all of this. Another role of this story that I've been thinking about is Anna herself. Being deaf in 1916 in the countryside of Transylvania presented many difficulties. Actually, it still does. I've read studies of the deaf, Hungarian-speaking, the Hungarian language deaf in Transylvania, and that is a language minority. Anna, she already belonged to an ethno-linguistic minority. Her family spoke Hungarian rather than Romanian. At that time, her lack of hearing and voice would have been seen as language-less. Now, in these days, there's a growing knowledge of how deaf people have a marvelously rich visual language and culture that is capable of beautiful poetry and much, much laughter done with the hands. It is a beautiful thing to see. Anna's opportunities would have been limited by the time into which she was born. And in the silence that isolated her from hearing people, she knew just what to do in that moment. And she had the courage to act. Sometimes the people who live in the margins, for whatever reason, even those of us who may live in the margins and also have that privilege of being white Americans, we are often in a unique position, as Anna was, to see solutions that are different from the ones offered by the mainstream. I imagine that if Anna had been able to hear, she would have been caught up in the horror of her sister's cry and the fear of the soldiers crashing through the woods. In the silence of her deafness, she could have a kind of beginner's mind that pushed her to action. In recent weeks, as the outcome of this election has unfolded, many of us, I can never, with you guys, ever say all of us, but many of us have been restless. There are a lot of other words I could use to describe the feeling, but restless is a feeling. Can I ask, how many of you have felt restless? Okay, good guess then. Discouraged? It is as if, for me, analyzing this, the old ways that we went about things and we ignored things are not going to serve us. My restlessness and desire to see work going on in a new way are part of what spurred me to go to Standing Rock and experience a community of people who were willing to put their bodies on the line to save their sacred land and water, as Anna put her body on the line to save her sister Anna, her sister Agnes. I am moved by Shandor's story because it is evidence of a sisterhood that risks disapproval and even death to save the life of a sister. What are we willing to do for those who are disenfranchised in this country? Would we do what Anna did for her sister? Are we willing to go through danger in order to leave a legacy for generations to come? Many of you, as I, have been feeling a little like Shandor's family in that barn. We can hear soldiers crashing through the woods. I would love for all of us to have that sound of soldiers spur us to want to make that kind of sisterhood that Anna made with Agnes. I believe we are being called to be Anna. And in order to do Anna's work, each of us needs to be reaching out and be in relationship with each other. The Happenings Hub is a good way. And with the greater community, with our neighborhoods. Last week, I heard from Brenda Voisard and Maureen Davies about a gathering they had in their neighborhood, meeting people they hadn't met before, sharing food together. And on Friday evening, Muslims, Jews, and Unitarian Universalists gathered in this sanctuary to worship together. We recognized our many differences. We weren't trying to be the same in belief and practice, and we shared a common prayer for peace. Some friendships are going to be easy to make, and some will be difficult. Do you know that our community is pretty scary to many people? Do you know that? When I reach out to Muslims and other immigrant populations who strongly desire to keep their cultures intact in this country, I can understand their fear of me, a woman openly in a relationship with another woman for decades. And that is possibly one of their greatest fears of what could happen to their daughters. And yet, we must persevere. Hearts will open, and I have witnessed that. And it would be a privilege if people trusted us enough to ask for our help. Trust. Trust. Perhaps it is the trust that moves me more than anything about this story. As Anna reached out to her sister Agnes, I imagine that baby stopped crying. She trusted. Perhaps she even enjoyed that run into the woods, that race to safety. It moves me because many years ago, when I left my birth religion, I lost my trust. And I believe that trust building is the work I was brought here to do among you and between me and the people of my birth religion. I have no trouble trusting Muslims. No trouble at all. Hindus, Jews, I have trouble trusting people in the LDS Church. And that is because when I left, I truly felt that my family would have preferred me dead my niece is here. I'm so sorry, Emily, you're here for this one. When Senator Brian Shiozawa came to talk with us about the Japanese concentration camps and his family's experience with towpaths, I spoke of my beloved grandfather Brown, who was kind to the people incarcerated at Hart Mountain in Wyoming. And I said this: I want to not just be kind to those people who are threatened with incarceration. I want to stand with them. I want to be with them when the police comes to pick them up. I want to be able to say, take me too. Can you see the baby crying? Can you see the baby crying? Some of you perceive my time at Standing Rock as harsh. It is true that the wind was blowing hard and it was very cold, but it was a wonderful place to be, a place of kindness. The main purpose, expressed many times every day, was to keep that black snake at the pipeline away, to stop that black snake. But what happened was so much more. Something that has not been lifted up much in the news is that no alcohol or drugs or guns were allowed in that place. Do you know that one of the great injustices to Native Americans was the intentional spreading of alcohol or firewater by white settlers and military? For centuries, the problems of alcoholism among Native peoples have been far-reaching. And as one of the grandmothers in Grandma's kitchen told me, narcotics are also prescribed much more often to Native Americans than to other populations, causing other addictions. And Standing Rock was a place you could feel was moving to health. More people were coming to sobriety and wholeness. And if that resonates with any of you, now is the time. Your way of preparing for the work to stand with others might be entering a 12-step program yourself. And a new one, a secular one called Life Ring, is coming to this congregation from this month. If you want to know more about it, I'm glad to speak about it. In these next months, as the people of Standing Rock, I invite you too into your own practice to grow your hearts. Together with our intellectual understanding of all that is happening, let us not allow ourselves to get sucked into the fearful conversations and predictions of the months ahead that take away our sleep and take away whole evenings that could be spent communing with others. When you feel yourself getting into one of those negative roles, take a deep breath and think of what you are grateful for. That is good medicine. So I invite you now to take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath together. I invite you to think of what and whom you are grateful for. Perhaps your family, your ability to breathe, the presence of so many in this sanctuary. I invite you now to stand and tell someone near you of those things you are grateful for. Okay, this is the part I hate, stopping people from talking to each other. But I invite you to continue. Together, with gratitude in our hearts, may we prepare to see the baby crying, and may we build trust step by step with each other and beyond our community, so that we will be trusted enough to bring our neighbors to safety if called upon. And again, I say, if we are called upon, that would be a great honor. May it be so. Amen. I invite you to stand, and we will sing in body or spirit, and we will sing our closing song, number 1062, All Around the Child. Together we give thanks for the trust that is built in our lives. I give thanks especially for the trust I feel now in my family and for their love. May we look for the baby crying, and may we prepare by growing our hearts and our minds. During this season of gladness and unrest, may we reach out to others. May we make friends here and in ever-increasing circles so that we too can be part of that wonderful vision of Black Elk that came to fruition at Standing Rock and that must keep coming over and over again. This is what he saw. And while I stood there, I saw more than I can tell, and I understood more than I saw, for I was seeing in the sacred manner the shapes of all things in the Spirit, and the shape of all shapes as they must live together like one being. And I saw that the sacred hoop of my people was one of many hoops that made one circle, wide as daylight and starlight. And in the center grew one mighty flowering tree to shelter all children of one mother and one father. And I saw that it was holy. Amen. And may it be.